Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab. Now let's begin. Derek McGill had built the house with his own hands 12 years ago, back when the neighborhood was nothing but empty lots and ambitious young couples with more dreams than money. Now the maple trees he'd planted as saplings provided actual shade, and his 9-year-old daughter Emma could climb them without him worrying the branches would snap. He was pushing the mower across the front lawn, the Saturday morning sun already making the back of his neck sweat, when he heard the scream. Not the playful shriek Emma made when he chased her around the yard. This was different. This was terror. Derek killed the engine and ran. The front door stood open. He'd left it that way for the cross breeze, and he took the porch steps in one bound. Inside, the living room looked normal. The TV played cartoons to an empty couch. Emma's coloring books lay scattered on the coffee table. Then he heard his daughters muffled crying from the hallway. He found them in Emma's bedroom. His mother-in-law, Victoria Daly, had Emma pinned to the floor, one bony hand clamped over the girl's mouth, the other gripping her shoulder. Victoria's perfectly styled gray hair hadn't moved an inch, but her face was twisted into something Derek had never seen before. Not the cool disapproval she usually wore, but something raw and desperate. "You saw nothing," Victoria hissed, leaning close to Emma's tear-streaked face. "Say it. Say you saw nothing." Derek crossed the room in 2 strides and grabbed Victoria by the shoulders, hauling her up and away from his daughter. The older woman was surprisingly light, all sharp angles and expensive perfume. "What the hell are you doing?" Victoria's expression shifted so fast it should have won awards. The desperate fury vanished, replaced by her usual mask of dignified offense. She smoothed her blouse and let out a laugh that sounded like ice cracking. "Oh, Derek, don't be so dramatic. She's lying. She always lies. You know how children are." Emma scrambled backward until her back hit the wall, pulling her knees to her chest. Her whole body shook. She was wearing her favorite purple shirt with a unicorn on it, the one Derek's wife Lori had bought her for her birthday last month. Now it was twisted and rumpled from Victoria's grip. Emma doesn't lie. Derek kept himself between Victoria and his daughter, his hands curled into fists at his sides. His heart hammered against his ribs. "Emma, what happened?" "She's being ridiculous," Victoria said, her voice sharp now. "I was simply trying to have a conversation with my granddaughter, and she started this whole scene. Honestly, Derek, the drama in this house." "Dad." Emma's voice was so small. Her brown eyes, Lori's eyes, were huge in her pale face. "Dad, check her purse." Victoria's reaction was instant. Her face went from irritated to pale in a heartbeat, and her hand flew to the designer handbag hanging from her shoulder. This is absurd." "My purse." "What?" But Derek saw it. The fear. Just for a second, Victoria Daly was afraid, and that told him everything he needed to know. "Give me the purse." "Absolutely not. This is an invasion of privacy. I'm going to call Lori right now and tell her." Derek held out his hand. His voice came out flat and hard, the tone he'd used exactly twice in his marriage. Once when a contractor tried to stiff him on a job, and once when a drunk driver nearly hit Emma's school bus. "Give me the purse, or I'm calling the police, and we can let them look through it." Victoria clutched the bag tighter. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Derek could hear the cartoons still playing in the living room, absurdly cheerful. He could hear Emma's ragged breathing behind him. He could hear his own pulse in his ears. Finally, Victoria's fingers loosened. She thrust the bag at him. Fine. But when you find nothing, you're going to apologize. To me and to your wife for this insane accusation." Derek took the bag. It was heavier than he expected, some kind of leather that probably cost more than his truck payment. He opened it. Inside, nestled among Victoria's wallet, her phone, and a pack of mints, were 3 amber prescription bottles. Derek picked up the first one. The label read Zolpidem, 10 milligrams prescribed to Brian Daly, Victoria's late husband who died of a heart attack 8 months ago. The second bottle, diazepam 5 milligrams, also prescribed to Brian Daly. The third bottle was different. The label had been partially scratched off, but Derek could still read digoxin and a dosage he didn't recognize. "What is this?" Derek's voice sounded distant to his own ears. Why do you have Brian's prescriptions? I simply haven't cleaned out my purse since. It's been difficult since he passed. Dad. Emma's voice was stronger now. She stood up, still pressed against the wall, but standing. Dad, I saw her. This morning, when you were outside. I came down for breakfast, and Mom was at the table with her coffee, and Victoria was, her voice hitched. She put something in Mom's cup, from a bottle like those. When she saw me, she grabbed me and dragged me in here and said I saw nothing, and if I told anyone, something bad would happen to Mom. Derek McGill believed in 3 things: honest work, strong coffee, and keeping your word. At 36, he ran his own custom carpentry business in suburban Philadelphia, building decks and kitchen cabinets for people who wanted quality over speed. His hands were calloused, his truck was paid off, and he'd married Lori Daly 10 years ago in a ceremony small enough that everyone actually talked to each other. Life was good, simple, predictable. He should have known that wouldn't last. It was a Thursday afternoon in late September when Derek first noticed something was off. He'd knocked off work early. A client had postponed until next week and came home to find his 9-year-old daughter Emma sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring at her untouched snack like it might bite her. Hey, Cricket! He ruffled her dark hair as he passed, heading for the fridge. How was school? Fine. She didn't look up. Derek grabbed a beer and leaned against the counter, studying her. Emma was usually a chatterbox, eager to tell him about every detail of her day, who sat with who at lunch, what game they played at recess, whether Mrs. Patterson wore the funny cat sweater again. This hollow monotone wasn't her. Just fine? Nothing else. Grandma Vicky picked me up today. That explained it. Victoria Daly had been dropping by more frequently since her husband Brian died in February. A sudden heart attack at 63, gone before the ambulance arrived. Victoria claimed she needed family around her, needed to feel close to her daughter and granddaughter while she grieved. Lori, being Lori, had opened their home without hesitation. Derek tried to be understanding. He really did. But Victoria had a way of making him feel like he was tracking mud across a white carpet just by existing in his own house. That's nice of her, Derek said, trying to keep his tone neutral. Where's your mom? Lying down. She said her head hurt. Emma finally looked up, and Derek saw something in her eyes he didn't like. Something guarded. Grandma Vicky made her some tea. Well, that was thoughtful. Derek took a pull from his beer. You okay, Cricket? You seem quiet. Emma's gaze slid away. I'm fine. Can I go play outside? Sure. Stay in the yard where I can see you. She was gone before he finished the sentence, leaving her apple slices untouched. Derek frowned at the abandoned snack, then headed upstairs. He found Lori in their bedroom, curtains drawn, lying on top of the covers in her work clothes. She was a paralegal at a downtown firm, usually sharp and energetic. Now she looked gray, her skin clammy. Hey, he sat on the edge of the bed. Em said you're not feeling well. Lori opened her eyes halfway. Just a headache. A bad one. Mom made me some chamomile tea, but I think I might be coming down with something. This is the 3rd time this week you felt sick. I know. I'm probably just run down. Work's been crazy. She managed a wan smile. Don't worry. I'll be fine tomorrow. But she wasn't fine tomorrow. Or the day after that. Over the next 2 weeks, Derek watched his wife deteriorate. Some days she was okay, tired but functional. Other days she could barely get out of bed, complaining of dizziness, nausea, headaches. She lost weight. Her hands shook when she tried to type on her laptop. Maybe you should see a doctor, Derek suggested one Sunday morning, watching her push scrambled eggs around her plate without eating. I have an appointment Tuesday. Lori set down her fork. I'm sure it's just stress. Or maybe early menopause. God, I'm only 34. Victoria, who'd stayed over that weekend to help out, reached across the table to pat Lori's hand. Don't worry, sweetheart. Women in our family have always been sensitive to stress. Your Aunt Carol had terrible spells in her 30s. Remember? Derek didn't remember because he'd never met Aunt Carol, who'd apparently died young of some vague illness Victoria never fully explained. But Lori nodded, seeming reassured by her mother's certainty. That was the thing about Victoria. She had answers for everything, delivered with such confidence that questioning her felt like a personal failing. She'd been a nurse before she retired, which gave her authority on medical matters. She'd raised Lori alone after divorcing her first husband when Lori was 2, which gave her authority on parenting. She'd been married to Brian for 30 years, which gave her authority on marriage. Derek, with his state school education and his hands that always had sawdust under the nails, had no authority on anything in Victoria's eyes. He was simply the man her daughter had chosen, not the lawyer or Dr. Victoria had envisioned, but acceptable enough. Barely. I brought you some supplements, Victoria continued, pulling a small bag from her purse. B vitamins, iron, some magnesium. They'll help with the fatigue. Thanks, Mom. Lori smiled gratefully. I don't know what I'd do without you. Derek said nothing. He was probably being paranoid. Victoria was helping. She was being supportive. The fact that he found her presence suffocating was his problem, not hers. But then Emma started acting strange. His daughter had always been comfortable around Victoria. Not close, exactly, but polite and affectionate in the way kids are with grandparents they see occasionally. But now Emma tensed whenever Victoria walked into a room. She found excuses to leave. She stopped talking about her day when Victoria was around. One evening, Derek found Emma hiding in the garage while he was organizing his tools. She was curled up behind a stack of lumber, her arms wrapped around her knees. Cricket? What are you doing out here? Nothing. But her voice was small, uncertain. Is Grandma Vicky gone? She's inside with Mom. Derek crouched down beside her. Is something wrong? Did Grandma do something? No. Too fast. Too definite. I don't like when she visits. Why not? Emma bit her lip. She's different when you're not around. A chill ran down Derek's spine. Different how? Just different. She says things. What kind of things? I don't want to talk about it. You'll think I'm lying. Derek put his hand on her shoulder. I would never think you're lying. You're the most honest person I know. Tell me. But Emma just shook her head, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Can we just stay out here for a while? Please. They sat together in the garage for 20 minutes, Derek pretending to reorganize his tool bench while Emma slowly relaxed. When they finally went inside, Victoria was putting on her coat in the foyer. There you are, she said coolly. Lori's asleep. I gave her something to help her rest. Her gaze lingered on Emma. Where have you two been? Garage. I was showing him how to use a level. Derek kept his voice casual. Thanks for staying with Lori. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course. That's what mothers do. She shifted her designer handbag to her other shoulder. I'll be back Saturday. We can't have Lori deteriorating like this without proper supervision. After she left, Derek locked the door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. Something was wrong. He couldn't articulate what exactly, but every instinct he had was screaming that something in his house, in his family, was badly wrong. He found Emma in her room, sitting on her bed with her stuffed elephant clutched to her chest. Hey, he sat down beside her. I know you don't want to talk about Grandma Vicky, but I need you to do something for me. If she ever does anything that makes you uncomfortable, or if she says something that scares you, I want you to tell me right away. Okay. Emma nodded, but wouldn't meet his eyes. I'm serious, Cricket, right away. No matter what she says, no matter what she threatens. She didn't threaten me, Emma said quickly. Too quickly. Derek's jaw tightened. But she said something. Dad, please. I don't want to make things worse. Worse how? Emma finally looked at him, and what he saw on her face made his heart clench. Fear. His 9-year-old daughter was afraid. I don't want Mom to get sicker. Before Derek could respond, before he could press for more information, Lori called weakly from their bedroom. Derek stood, torn between comforting his daughter and checking on his wife. We'll talk more later, he promised Emma. But remember what I said. Tell me if anything happens. He spent the rest of the evening taking care of Lori, bringing her water, cool cloth for her forehead, checking on her every hour. She was feverish now, her skin burning hot to the touch. Whatever was wrong with her was getting worse. By the time Derek fell into bed after midnight, he'd made a decision. He was going to start paying closer attention to Victoria's visits, to what she brought, what she said, what she did when she thought no one was watching. Because his gut was telling him something was very, very wrong. And Derek McGill had learned long ago to trust his gut. 3 days later, on Saturday morning, Derek was mowing the lawn when he heard Emma scream. He ran inside to find Victoria with his daughter pinned to the floor, one hand over Emma's mouth, hissing threats in a voice he'd never heard her use before. The mask had finally slipped, and when he opened Victoria's purse, when he saw those prescription bottles with her dead husband's name on them, when Emma told him what she'd witnessed, everything clicked into place. Victoria hadn't been helping Lori. She'd been poisoning her. Derek's hands shook as he held the bottles, his mind racing through the past few weeks. Every cup of tea Victoria had made, every supplement she'd brought, every time Lori had gotten worse after Victoria's visits. His wife had been losing weight, losing strength, becoming a ghost in her own home, and her mother had been doing it deliberately. "You're insane," Derek breathed. "You're poisoning your own daughter." Victoria's face twisted. "Don't be absurd. Those are just some old medications. Emma saw you put something in Lori's coffee this morning." Derek's voice was deadly quiet now. "And I'm guessing if I ask the doctor to test Lori's blood, we'll find traces of these drugs. Zolpidem, diazepam." He held up the third bottle, the one with the scratch label. "Digoxin. That's for heart conditions, isn't it? That's what you gave Brian, wasn't it? That's how you killed him." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the TV in the other room seemed to hold its breath. Then Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, Derek, you really are simple, aren't you? You think you can prove any of that? Brian died of natural causes. The coroner said so. And Lori's just stressed. Her doctor will confirm that. As for these," she gestured at the bottles, "old medications I forgot to throw away. Nothing more. I'll tell Lori everything. And she'll believe her mother over her husband. We both know that." Victoria's smile was razor sharp. "She always has. She always will." Poor Derek, so paranoid, so controlling, making wild accusations about his grieving mother-in-law, trying to isolate Lori from her own mother. That's abuse, you know? Psychological abuse. Derek's grip tightened on the bottles. "Get out of my house." "Gladly. But I'll be back. Lori needs me." Victoria picked up her purse, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror and smoothing her hair. "And when I come back, we're going to have a very serious conversation about your mental health, Derek. For Emma's sake, if nothing else. A child shouldn't be exposed to a father who's becoming unstable." She left in a cloud of expensive perfume, her heels clicking on the walkway, her back straight and dignified, like she hadn't just been caught red-handed, like she wasn't a killer. Derek stood frozen in the hallway, the prescription bottles still clutched in his hand, his daughter crying softly behind him. He couldn't call the police. Victoria was right. He had no proof. Just old medication and the word of a 9-year-old child against a grieving widow and respected retired nurse. The bottles could have been in her purse for months. Emma could be mistaken about what she saw. And Lori, God, Lori, his wife, who loved her mother despite everything, who'd been raised by Victoria alone, who'd defend her to the death. Literally in this case. Derek looked down at the bottles in his hand. Brian Daly had died of a heart attack. Sudden. Unexpected. What if it hadn't been natural? What if Victoria had been slowly poisoning him, too, building up toxins in his system until his heart gave out? And now she was doing the same to Lori. But why? Why would a mother kill her own daughter? The answer hit him like a sledgehammer. Insurance money. Brian's life insurance. Lori's life insurance. Victoria had stayed home as a nurse, barely worked after marrying Brian, and he'd been comfortable but not wealthy. If both were dead, Emma's soft crying pulled him back to the present. He turned to find his daughter sitting on the floor, hugging her knees to her chest, her whole body shaking. Derek knelt beside her and pulled her into his arms. "It's okay, Cricket. It's going to be okay. Is Mom going to die?" Emma's voice was muffled against his chest. "No, absolutely not. I promise you, I'm going to keep Mom safe." Derek pulled back enough to look his daughter in the eyes. "And I'm going to keep you safe, too. But I need you to help me. Can you do that?" Emma nodded, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "First, we're not going to tell Mom about this yet. She's too sick to deal with it. And Victoria was right about one thing. Mom might not believe us. Not right away. But I'm going to prove what Victoria's doing. I'm going to get evidence. And then we're going to stop her. Do you understand?" "Ow!" Derek looked at the prescription bottles again. An idea was forming in his mind. Dangerous. Probably illegal. But Victoria had made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated him. She thought he was simple. Just a carpenter with dirt under his nails. Too stupid to figure out her plan. Too weak to stop her. She was wrong on both counts. You let me worry about that, Derek said, standing up and pulling Emma with him. Right now, we need to make sure Mom doesn't drink or eat anything Victoria gives her. Okay. Nothing. Even if it seems rude. Okay. Good girl. Derek pocketed the prescription bottles. Evidence. He needed to be smart about this. Methodical. He needed to build his case carefully, document everything. And most importantly, he needed to keep Victoria from realizing he was onto her until the trap was set. Because Derek McGill kept his promises. And he just promised his daughter that her mother would live. Which meant Victoria Daly had to go down. The next chapter of Derek's life started with a phone call to his oldest friend. Tommy Duffy had been Derek's college roommate back when they were both young and stupid, before Derek had dropped out to start his business and Tommy had finished his chemistry degree. Now Tommy worked for a pharmaceutical company, testing drug interactions and safety profiles. They met for beers at O'Malley's on Tuesday night. The bar was half empty, a Phillies game playing on the TV nobody was watching. Derek slid into the booth across from Tommy and pushed a paper bag across the table. Okay, this is weird even for you, Tommy said, peering into the bag at the prescription bottles. Are you dealing drugs now? Because I gotta tell you, man, you'd be terrible at it. I need you to analyze these. Tell me what they are, what they do, whether they'd show up in a blood test. And I need you to keep it quiet. Tommy's expression shifted from amused to concerned. Derek, what's going on? My mother-in-law is poisoning my wife. The words hung in the air between them. Tommy didn't laugh. Didn't tell Derek he was crazy. He just looked at his friend's face, the circles under his eyes, the new lines around his mouth, and nodded slowly. Tell me everything. Derek did. He laid out the whole story. Lori's mysterious illness, Emma's fear, Victoria's increasing presence, the confrontation Saturday morning. By the time he finished, his beer was warm and untouched. Tommy pulled the bottles from the bag, examining the labels. Okay, zolpidem is Ambien, sleeping medication. Diazepam is Valium, anxiety, muscle relaxation. Digoxin. He frowned. That's for heart conditions. Congestive heart failure, atrial fibrillation. It slows the heart rate, makes it beat more effectively. What happens if you give it to someone who doesn't need it? In small doses over time, you build up toxic levels, cause nausea, confusion, vision problems, irregular heartbeat. Eventually, Tommy met Derek's eyes. Eventually, it could cause cardiac arrest, especially if combined with other medications, like the ones used to kill Brian Daly. Jesus Christ. Tommy set the bottles down. Derek, if you're right about this, I am right. Then you need to go to the police. Not me. The police. With what evidence? Old medication in her purse? Victoria's a retired nurse. She'll say she forgot to dispose of them. And Emma's 9 years old. Her testimony alone won't hold up, especially against Victoria's reputation. Derek leaned forward. I need proof that Lori's being drugged. I need a blood test showing these medications in her system. And I need to figure out Victoria's endgame, so I can prove motive. The blood test I can help with. I have a friend who does independent lab work. But, Derek, Tommy's expression was troubled. What are you planning to do once you have proof? Whatever it takes to stop her. They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Tommy sighed and pocketed one of the bottles. I'll analyze these, see what I can find out. And I'll talk to my friend about testing Lori's blood. But you need to promise me you won't do anything stupid. Define stupid. Derek, I promise I won't do anything until I have all the facts. It wasn't quite what Tommy had asked for, but it was the best Derek could offer. After they parted ways, Derek drove home slowly, his mind working through the puzzle. Victoria was killing Lori. That was the what. The why was almost certainly money, insurance payouts, inheritance, maybe control of Emma. But the how was what interested Derek now. Victoria was careful, methodical. She'd been doing this for weeks, maybe months, slowly building up the drugs in Lori's system. Slow enough that it looked like natural illness. Slow enough that by the time anyone realized what was happening, it would be too late. But she'd made two mistakes. She'd let Emma see her, and she'd underestimated Derek. Derek pulled into his driveway and sat in the truck for a moment, staring at his house. The maple trees he'd planted were losing their leaves, red and gold carpeting the lawn. The porch light was on. Lori always left it on for him. Inside, his wife and daughter were probably getting ready for bed, going through the evening routine they'd done 1,000 times before. Normal life. Ordinary life. Victoria was trying to take that away. She was trying to kill Lori, leave Emma without a mother, and Derek had no doubt she'd find a way to take Emma from him, too. Paint him as an unfit father, maybe. Unstable. Use his accusations against him. Not going to happen. Derek got out of the truck and headed inside. He found Lori in the living room, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, watching TV. She looked a little better tonight. Her color was back, her eyes clearer. That made sense. Victoria hadn't visited since Saturday. No more poison in her system. Hey, Derek sat down beside her, pulling her close. How are you feeling? Better, actually. Maybe whatever bug I had is finally passing. She snuggled against him. Mom called earlier. She wants to come over tomorrow to check on me. Derek's jaw tightened. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because. He chose his words carefully. Because you're finally starting to feel better. And you know how stressed you get when she visits. Maybe you need some time to just rest and recover without anyone hovering. Lori pulled back to look at him. She's my mother, Derek. She's just trying to help. I know. But sometimes help can be exhausting. That's all I'm saying. He could see her wavering. Part of Lori knew Derek was right. Victoria's help often left her more drained than before. But the lifelong programming of be grateful to your mother. She sacrificed everything for you. You owe her was strong. Just a few days, Derek pressed. Give yourself a real break. I'll take care of you. I guess that would be okay. Lori smiled. You're sweet. Overprotective, but sweet. If only she knew. That night, after Lori fell asleep, Derek sat at his laptop in the garage and started researching. Digoxin poisoning. Insurance fraud. How to prove someone was being slowly murdered. He took notes in a composition book he'd bought at the drugstore, documenting everything. Dates Victoria visited, when Lori got sick, what medications Victoria brought. He was building a case. And when it was complete, Victoria Daly would face justice. One way or another. The next 2 weeks were a careful dance. Derek put Victoria off with excuses. Lori needed rest. The house was being fumigated. Emma had a stomach bug. Victoria accepted these delays with increasing irritation, but she didn't push. Maybe she thought time was on her side. Maybe she thought the damage was already done. Meanwhile, Tommy came through. His friend at the independent lab ran a blood panel on Lori under the guise of checking for vitamin deficiencies. The results came back positive for traces of diazepam and digoxin. Not enough to be immediately dangerous, but enough to prove she was being drugged. This is insane, Tommy said when they met again at O'Malley's. He slid the lab report across the table. Your wife's being poisoned, and we have proof. You need to go to the police now. Not yet. I need more. More what? How much more do you need? I need to prove Victoria put these drugs in Lori's system. The lab report proves Lori was drugged, but doesn't prove who did it. Victoria will claim Lori must have taken them herself, or that someone else did it, or that the lab made a mistake. Derek folded the report and put it in his jacket pocket. I need to catch her in the act. And how do you plan to do that? By giving her the opportunity. Tommy stared at him. You're going to let her try to poison Lori again? Are you out of your mind? I'm going to let her think she has the opportunity. There's a difference. Derek leaned back in the booth. Lori's feeling better now, strong enough to handle this. I'm going to tell her everything tonight, show her the lab results. Once she knows what her mother's been doing, we'll set a trap. Derek, Victoria thinks I'm stupid. She thinks I'll never figure it out, and even if I do, I won't be able to prove it. She's arrogant. That's her weakness. Derek's voice was cold, certain, and I'm going to use that arrogance to destroy her. That night, Derek sat Lori down at the kitchen table and told her the truth. He showed her the prescription bottles, the lab report, laid out everything Victoria had been doing. He watched his wife's face cycle through disbelief, horror, denial, and finally, devastating acceptance. She killed Dad. Lori's voice was hollow. She killed Brian, and now she's trying to kill me. For the insurance money, Derek confirmed. I checked. Brian had a $500,000 policy, and you have one for the same amount. If you died, Victoria would be the beneficiary as your next of kin. She claimed she needed it to take care of Emma. Oh my God. Lori put her head in her hands. Oh my God, I can't believe she's my mother. How could she? Derek moved around the table and pulled her into his arms. I'm so sorry, but we're going to stop her. I promise you, we're going to stop her. They talked for hours. Lori cried, raged, mourned the mother she thought she'd known. By midnight, her tears had dried and her jaw was set with determination. What do? She asked. We give her enough rope to hang herself. The plan was simple. Lori would call Victoria, say she was feeling better and wanted to make up for lost time. Invite her for lunch on Saturday. During the visit, they'd set up hidden cameras. Derek had already bought 3 small cameras that looked like everyday objects. They'd catch Victoria in the act of drugging Lori's food or drink. And then they'd have everything they needed for the police. She'll be suspicious, Lori warned. After Derek confronted her, after we kept her away for 2 weeks, then we need to give her a reason to let her guard down, Derek said. What if I wasn't here? What if I went out, left you two alone? Victoria would feel safe. She'd make her move. I don't want to be alone with her. You won't be. Emma and I will be in the garage, watching on the camera feed. The second she tries something, we'll come in. Lori hesitated, then nodded. Okay, let's do it. Saturday dawned clear and cool. Derek spent the morning setting up the cameras. One in the kitchen light fixture pointing at the table, one in a decorative book on the living room shelf, one in the hallway smoke detector. He tested them all, made sure the feeds were recording to his laptop in the garage. Victoria arrived at 11:30, impeccably dressed and carrying a casserole dish. Lori, sweetheart, you look so much better. She swept in the house like she owned it, air kissing Lori's cheeks. Her gaze landed on Derek. Derek, still here, I see. About that. Derek grabbed his keys off the counter. I've got a client emergency. Deck collapse, needs immediate attention. I'll be back in a few hours. He kissed Lori's forehead, squeezed her hand, be careful, and headed for the door. Emma, come on. You're coming with me. But I wanted to... Emma started, then caught Derek's warning look. Okay, Dad. They didn't actually go anywhere. Derek pulled the truck out of the driveway, parked it 2 blocks away, and walked back through the neighbors' yards. He and Emma slipped into the garage through the side door and settled in front of the laptop, watching the camera feeds. Inside the house, Victoria was already at work. On the kitchen camera, Derek watched her unpack the casserole, chicken and rice, one of Lori's favorites. But before putting in the oven, Victoria pulled a small bottle from her purse and added several drops of clear liquid to the dish, stirring it in. Got you, Derek breathed. But Victoria wasn't done. While the casserole warmed, she made tea. Derek watched her prepare 2 cups, watched her pull another bottle from her purse, the digoxin, he'd bet his life on it, and dump a significant amount into 1 cup. Not drops this time. A large dose. This wasn't slow poisoning anymore. This was endgame. Victoria had decided to finish the job. Emma grabbed Derek's arm, her fingers digging in. Dad, I know. Stay here. Derek burst from the garage and ran for the back door. He could hear Victoria's voice through the screen, sweet as honey. Here, dear. Drink your tea while it's hot. It'll help settle your stomach. Derek crashed through the door. Victoria spun around, the drugged teacup in her hand, guilt written all over her face for just a second before the mask slammed back into place. Derek, what are you? I thought you had an emergency. Give me the cup. This is ridiculous. I'm just giving my daughter tea. Lori, don't drink that. Derek crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and took the cup from Victoria's hand. Don't drink or eat anything she brought. Victoria's face twisted with fury. You're insane. You're actually insane. Lori, you need to see what he's doing. He's trying to isolate you from me, poison you against me. I know what you've been doing, Mom. Lori's voice was ice. I know about the drugs, about Brian, about everything. The silence that followed was arctic. Victoria's face went through several expressions: shock, fear, calculation, before settling on righteous anger. I have no idea what you're talking about. If you've been drugged, maybe you should look at your paranoid husband. We have proof. Derek held up his phone, showing the camera feed. We have you on video adding something to Lori's food and drink. We have lab results showing she's been poisoned. We have your dead husband's prescription medications. We have Emma's eyewitness testimony. He stepped closer. We have everything, Victoria. It's over. For a long moment, Victoria just stared at them. Then something shifted in her eyes. The mask cracked, and what emerged wasn't the dignified matriarch or the concerned mother. It was something cold and calculating and utterly remorseless. You think you've won? Victoria's voice was soft, dangerous. You think you can prove any of this? My word against yours. A grieving widow against a controlling husband and a brainwashed daughter. I'll destroy you in court. I'll take Emma. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are, Derek. And when I'm done, when you're done, you'll be in prison. The voice came from the doorway. They all turned to see Detective Gordon Strickland standing there, his badge visible on his belt. Mrs. Daly, I'm going to need you to come with me. Derek had called Strickland that morning, explained the situation, asked him to wait nearby. The detective had been skeptical, but agreed to observe. Now he'd heard everything, seen everything. Victoria's face went pale. This is a setup. You can't. This is entrapment. Actually, it's just good police work. Strickland pulled out his handcuffs. Victoria Daly, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and suspicion of murder in the death of Brian Daly. You have the right to remain silent. Derek stopped listening. He pulled Lori into his arms, felt her shaking against him. Emma appeared in the doorway from the garage, and he wrapped his arm around her too, holding his family together while Victoria was led away in handcuffs, still protesting, still claiming innocence. It was over. The danger was past. But Derek knew the real fight was just beginning. The trial, the revelations, the media circus. Victoria might be in custody, but she wasn't defeated yet. She'd fight with everything she had. Good, Derek thought grimly. So would he. The trial took 9 months to begin. In that time, Derek's life transformed into something he barely recognized. The quiet carpenter who just wanted to build things and raise his daughter became the center of a media storm. Local MOM accused of murder screamed the headlines. Daughter drugged by own mother proclaimed the tabloids. Victoria pleaded not guilty, naturally. Her lawyers, expensive ones, paid for by Brian's life insurance that she'd already collected, painted her as a grieving widow being persecuted by a controlling son-in-law. They claimed Derek had planted the drugs. That Lori was mentally unstable. That Emma had been coached. But Derek had receipts. Literally. He'd found Victoria's pharmacy records, obtained through subpoena, showing she'd been refilling Brian's prescriptions months after his death. He'd found a notebook in Victoria's house detailing dosages and times, a meticulous record of how she'd been poisoning Lori. And most damningly, the exhumation of Brian Daly's body showed toxic levels of digoxin in his system. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Deborah Simmons, built an airtight case. This wasn't a crime of passion, she told the jury in her opening statement. This was calculated, methodical murder. Victoria Daly killed her husband for his insurance money. And when that ran out, she decided to kill her own daughter to collect again. She saw her family as nothing more than financial assets to be liquidated. Derek sat through every day of the trial, watching Victoria maintain her composure in the defendant's chair. She dressed conservatively, played the part of the confused, grieving mother to perfection. Her lawyers hammered at Emma during her testimony, tried to make the 11-year-old crack. They didn't succeed. Emma had been through hell, but she was Derek's daughter. Strong, certain. She looked the defense attorney in the eye and said, I saw what I saw. My grandmother tried to kill my mother, and then she tried to make me lie about it. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood and read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Victoria's mask finally shattered. She lunged from her chair, screaming obscenities at Derek, at Lori, at Emma. It took 3 bailiffs to restrain her. The judge sentenced her to life without parole. As Victoria was led away, still screaming, still protesting her innocence. Derek felt Lori's hand slip into his. They stood together, watching the woman who'd tried to destroy their family disappear behind the courtroom doors. "It's really over," Lori whispered. "Yeah." Derek pulled her close. "It's really over." 18 months after Victoria's arrest, Derek sat on his front porch, watching Emma play in the yard with her new puppy, a golden retriever she named Justice, which Derek thought was a little on the nose, but whatever made his daughter happy. Lori was in the kitchen, making dinner, humming along to the radio. Normal life. Ordinary life. They'd clawed their way back to it, through therapy and nightmares and Emma's occasional panic attacks when she saw older women who looked like Victoria. But they made it. Tommy pulled up in his truck and climbed out, carrying a six-pack. "Thought you could use these." "You thought right." Derek took a beer and cracked it open. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Emma throw the ball for Justice, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood settling into evening. "You ever think about what would have happened if Emma hadn't seen?" Tommy asked quietly. "If Victoria had gotten away with it?" "Every day." Derek took a long drink. "Every single day. You did good, man. You saved your family." "I almost lost them." Derek shook his head. "If I'd been 5 minutes later that morning, if I hadn't believed Emma, if Victoria had been just a little more careful. But you weren't. You did, and she wasn't." Tommy clinked his bottle against Derek's. "That's what matters." Maybe. But Derek knew he'd carry the weight of those what-ifs for the rest of his life. He'd come so close to losing everything. His wife. His daughter. The quiet, ordinary life he'd built with his own hands. Victoria Daly had tried to take it all away. She thought Derek was too simple, too trusting, too weak to stop her. She'd underestimated the strength of a father protecting his family. That had been her fatal mistake. Derek took another sip of beer and smiled as Emma's laughter rang across the yard. His daughter was safe. His wife was healthy. His family was whole. Victoria would spend the rest of her life in prison, exactly where she belonged. And Derek McGill could finally rest. The story of the McGill family didn't end with Victoria's conviction. Life never wraps up that neatly, no matter how much we want it to. In the months that followed, Derek learned that surviving attempted murder was just the beginning of the work required to rebuild a family that had been nearly destroyed. Lori struggled. Of course she did. How do you process the fact that your mother, the woman who raised you, who you loved unconditionally, tried to kill you for money? She went to therapy twice a week, joined a support group for victims of family violence, and on bad days, she'd sit in the garage with Derek while he worked, not talking, just being present. Emma had nightmares. Sometimes Derek would wake at 3 in the morning to find his daughter standing in his bedroom doorway, clutching her stuffed elephant, asking if he'd checked the locks. He always had. He checked them 3 times every night now, a ritual he suspected he'd maintain for years to come. But there were good days too. Days when Lori smiled without that shadow of grief behind her eyes. Days when Emma played without looking over her shoulder. Days when the 3 of them would pile onto the couch with Justice the puppy and watch movies, eating popcorn, being boring and normal and alive. Derek treasured those days more than anything. One evening in late spring, nearly 2 years after Victoria's conviction, Derek was building a treehouse in the backyard. Emma had asked for one, and Derek had thrown himself into the project with enthusiasm. He was securing the platform when Lori climbed the ladder to sit beside him, dangling her legs over the edge. "This is really nice," she said, running her hand over the smooth wood. "You're good at this. Building things?" "Yeah, it's kind of my job." "No, I mean," Lori paused, searching for words. "Building our life back. Making us whole again. You're good at that too." Derek set down his hammer. "I didn't do it alone." "No, but you started it. When I wanted to give up, when I couldn't see past what she did, you kept pushing forward. You kept us moving." Lori leaned her head on his shoulder. "I don't think I ever thanked you for that. For saving my life. For believing Emma. For not giving up on us." "Lori," Derek put his arm around her. "You're my family. There was never any question of giving up." They sat together in the half-finished treehouse, watching the sun set behind the maple trees Derek had planted 15 years ago. Emma was inside doing homework, the puppy at her feet. Dinner was in the oven. Tomorrow, Derek had a job installing custom cabinets in a new house across town. Ordinary life. Hard won and precious beyond measure. I love you, Lori said quietly. I love you too. And in that moment, sitting in a half-built treehouse with his wife, Derek finally felt it. Peace. Real peace. Not the waiting for the other shoe to drop kind he'd been living with. Victoria was gone. The danger had passed. His family was safe. He'd kept his promise to Emma. He'd protected them. And now, finally, they could all move forward. Derek picked up his hammer and got back to work, building something strong and sturdy and meant to last. Just like the life he'd fought so hard to keep. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.